Hi, my name is Corky, and this is the Farmers Airship. This is a real Zeppelin made by Zeppelin. It's one of only two in the world and the only one in the United States. It was built in Friedrichshafen, Germany. It was built and erected in Germany, and it was brought over on board of a ship to Brownsville, Texas. We picked it up there, and then we flew it up to San Jose. And it's been operating on the West Coast, San Diego to Seattle mainly. But farmers wanted to do this summer tour, so off on the road we go. I never met anybody in my life, and I've been flying these for 37 years. And I know almost everybody that's been in the business in the last 37 years. And none of the pilots that I know ever had aspirations of being an airship pilot when they grew up. It's just kind of like being in the right place at the right time. But there's not a lot of people that do it, no. But it's a great job. I've seen the world from 500 feet going 40 miles an hour. It's fantastic. I mean, I've flown all over South Africa, all over South America, the United States. I've been to every burg, township, county in the United States and Canada, all over Europe, all over Western Europe, and a little bit of Eastern Europe. So I've seen a lot of the world very, very slowly. It's beautiful. A few years ago, I was training some guys to go up to the North Pole, and they were going to measure the thickness of the sea ice. I worked down in the Caribbean, basically looking for gun runners and drug smugglers and stuff like that, because you can stay up so long. With this ship, we could easily stay up 40 hours. A Zeppelin has a rigid framework. Now, years ago, back in the early Zeppelins, back in the 1920s and 30s, the Zeppelin had it had rings and longerons. In other words, it had rings that ran all the way back, the length of it, and then it had these longerons that connected all of them. Then it had a lot of wires and stuff for strengthening all inside. This one, we have three triangular mainframes that run from the nose back through the lower horizontal and the upper vertical. And by doing that, we're able to support the engines up on the envelope rather than on the gondola, and also the fins. That gives us hard points to attach to it, and by doing that, we're able to take the engines up off the gondola and make it much, much quieter. In fact, when you're in this, you can barely hear the engines run at all. It just makes a whooshing sound. Zeppelin was a horse soldier back around the time of the Civil War, and he came to the United States, and we were using balloons as observation balloons to look at the other guys. They'd raise them up and they'd look over the trees and they could see him. Well, he saw that and he thought, what a great idea. So he went back to Germany and thought, well, we can do this too. Well, then as time evolved, he thought, well, you know, now we have engines, and maybe if we put some fins on the back, we can steer it. And slowly, over the course of about 50 years, he came up with the Zeppelin. And they built 136 or 37 of them, something like that, over that time. And in each one, they learned a little bit, and they added something new to it, and learned a little bit more and added something new to it. Interestingly enough, 130 or so of those suckers crashed. Now, I mean, for the most part, nobody was hurt, but it was a learning process. Nobody had ever done it before, so they get up and they get going sideways in the wind and hit a tree or whatever. But during the First World War, they were used exclusively by the Germans when they were bombing England. Of course, everybody knows the story about the Hindenburg. Well, that was 1937.
Oh my, get out of the way, please. It's burning, bursting into flames, and it's falling on the mooring mast, and all the folks between us. This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world.
The United States then started building blimps, and blimps were used exclusively during the Second World War looking for submarines. Goodyear, for instance, built over 300 of them just for sub patrol, and they were all over the world, all around both oceans, the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Caribbean, and they were a submariner's nemesis, because if an airship got over the top of a submarine, back in those days they were all electric, so they had to come up and charge their batteries. Well, once an airship knew where a submarine was, they could just camp out, because they knew he had to come up at some point. And they did, and our guys could just drop depth charges on them if they wanted to. I only know of one actual contact where they dropped depth charges, and our guys got so excited they dropped them, but they forgot to arm them. They landed in the conning tower, and they never went off. However, the Germans came up and started shooting at that airship, Navy airship, and they just riddled it full of holes, but it just stayed there. The last one that the Navy flew was in 1962, I think, out of Moffett Field in California. But the jet age kind of started about in the late 1950s, 57, 58 with the DC-8 and the 707. And so now all of a sudden we're going from 250 miles an hour to 500 miles an hour, and fuel was 6 cents a gallon. I mean, I remember as a kid watching the 707s take off and the DC-8s. I think there was more fuel coming out the back of the motor than there was going in the front of it. And people started going faster. So there really wasn't a need for an airship. You know, the need just went away. Now, because they're so economical to operate, an airplane uses the bulk of its horsepower just creating lift. We already have the lift. So once we get up, we can just pull the power back to 40, 45%, and we can just cruise along at very low power settings. In fact, we usually cruise about 1,800 RPM, where an airplane would be cruising 2,500, 2,600 RPM. This is state of the art, it really is. When Zeppelin built this, they took 1930s technology and they moved it right up into the to the 21st century. It's all fly-by-wire. You can fly with 2 fingers. It's amazing. I mean, our instrument panel looks like the space shuttle. We've got every instrument that anybody would ever want. It's tremendously comfortable. You've got 360-degree field of vision, and you can literally fly with 2 fingers.